In this page, we want to further clarify the changes to data instances as well as changes to the schema. The general database maintains a current database state. It covers both the schema as well as data instances. Together, we define the current state for the database system. If the data is changed, then the database system state will be changed from the previous state we have before changes. If the schema is changed or updated, the database state will also be updated as well. So in the real-world database systems, the updates to the data happen very frequently and very often, because when we are running our system and application, we can frequently insert some data tuples, delete a data tuple, as well as update some attributes inside a data tuple. So updates to data happens very often and frequently. However, updates to a schema are very rare, and we don't do the changes like this. So the main reason we have introduced already, because if we change the schema, then all the data we have inside the schema has to update as well. It will be very painful for you. Okay, so we have mentioned that the relation and the tables, they are equivalent so far right now, and it will be helpful for your understanding. So once we are working on our relation models, and we can declare a relation based on what we learned in the previous page, we can indicate the relation name as well as attributes. And once we are working on the database systems and want to declare some relations, the way we do the declaration is actually to create some tables in the database system. So as shown in this page, a database schema comprises of declarations for the relation or the tables of the database system, and we can declare these relations or tables very easily. And in the introduction, we have mentioned two languages, if you still remember. We mentioned two languages in the introduction. The first one is called DDL, and the second one is called DML. The DDL is called Data Definition Language, and DML is called Data Manipulation Language. If you still remember, in the introduction, we mentioned that DDL mainly works for the data schemas. If we want to define, update, as well as delete a schema in our database systems, then we can use language called DDL. And once we want to update the data instances, like either insert, delete, or update the data instances or tuples, then we need to use the DML instead. And you might wonder what's the difference between the DDL, DML versus the SQL. So the full name for the SQL is called a Standard Query Language. So SQL is a commercial language we can use to program for our database systems. In SQL, it implements both DDL and DML. In other words, with SQL, we can both define a schema as well as manipulate the data instances. So in this section, we will briefly mention how can we use the DDL to help us to define database schemas with SQL for you. As to the update of the instances, we'll cover later. We have 3 sections on SQL specifically, and we'll learn this after the midterm. We will briefly mention how to define some schemas in SQL in this page, in this section. So as shown here, once we want to declare some relations in our database systems, we can do so by creating tables. Creating table is equivalent to declare a relation in the database systems. So here we can see that we can create a table followed by some table names, as then we have parentheses with a bunch of list of elements inside it to declare this table, and we have a semicolon at the end of this declaration. In this way, we can create a relation or a table in our database systems. In this table, we have a table name as well as a bunch of attributes of the table. This is how we can declare or create a table with SQL in our database systems. We can show you with the example. Now here we have a product, this is a relation, right? We write down them on paper like this. However, if we want to implement them with SQL in our database system, we can do so by creating a table for it. For example, we can do so by declaring something like this. Create a table. We have a product as a table name, right? With parentheses and semicolon at the end. Inside it, we have to declare a bunch of attributes. So the first attribute we have is name. Its type is char 20, right? We have comma here. The second attribute we have is the price. The third one we have is category. It's a VL char 30. And last one will be the manufacturer. VL char 30 as well. So let me move this upward and we can move this relation downward instead. So these two actually are equivalent. This is the relation we are declaring on our papers, right? Based on our ER diagram, we can translate it into a relation, something like this. This is the relation name. This is the attribute inside this relation with both name and with the types of the attributes. So we're declaring one relation like this. However, once we are working on a database system with SQL, we can declare this relation as a table instead. We can do so by creating a table, products. This is the product name, the relation name, followed by a bunch of attributes, right? So these two are equivalent. This one is in the relations. This one is in the SQL code. It declares one schema for the relation into tables inside our database systems.